Welcome, everyone, to Warrior Women in Business, episode number 55. Again, my name is Jasmine Sandler, for those of you that don't know me, and I'm very excited about my guest today, Shannon Lee, and we're going to have a really intense conversation, actually, about all the things that she's doing to do what I feel it makes a warrior woman, which is really doing things to impact the world in a very positive way. So we're going to talk about that today. But for those of you that don't know anything about Warrior Women in Business and where it came from, I'll just give you a quick 1 to 2 minute explanation. Warrior Women in Business actually started early in 2016 and was a kind of a division that launched out of necessity, I feel, out of my agency. We do a lot in branding and marketing for women, and I saw this real need for women to get education, information, and connections to women that have been there and done that. And that's why I started Warrior Women in Business. Every guest has been amazing, and they all have their own interpretations of what a warrior woman means, from someone who's really strong to someone who yields kindness. So it's really interesting, the women that I have on. And my purpose in the podcast and generally in life is to bring women together in a way that we can truly support each other. So that being said, Shannon Lee, you want to say hello before I jump into your amazing bio?
Hello, happy to be here.
Yes, and we're happy to have you on and have your time today. So my background is I used to be a boxer, and I love fighting, and I love what martial arts does for kids primarily, and also for women. I've seen it to give them discipline. That's number one. And really help people to understand how to work with each other. That's what I got out of it, being involved many years. So I personally have been a fan of Bruce Lee, and I more of his philosophies than his films, honestly. That's just the way I think. And I sought out Shannon because I watched Warrior on Netflix, and I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. I'm getting in touch with Shannon Lee. I want to learn more about this. I want to understand about the warrior. And then I got into listening to your book, and you're doing so many great things, and I thought, women really need to hear what you're doing. And not a lot of women come from a fighting background, so they don't necessarily study these things, right? But I think the teachings are very, very important. So just to share a little bit of a bio about Shannon Lee, she's a CEO and owner of the Bruce Lee Family Corporations, the chair of the Bruce Lee Foundation, the daughter of Bruce Lee, obviously. And she's also has her own podcast, the Bruce Lee podcast, which I just learned about and I'm going to delve into after this podcast. And what really made me excited was actually the camp, the Bruce Lee camp, where you're helping kids at Warrior Women Business. Just so you know, we have events where we work with the Mayor's Fund, and we raise money for to defeat things like domestic violence and human trafficking. So I'm very big into that. And I love what you're doing to help kids. I think it's really, really important in life. She's also an actress and executive producer of The Warrior, originally on HBO Max, right now on Netflix. Is that correct? And I mentioned she has a book, Be Water, My Friend, which is everybody should read or listen to, depending on your interests. And she's been a speaker at TEDx. Her bio goes on and on. So I just want to jump into this because there's a lot here. I think a lot of people, when I mentioned to them, when I have Shannon Lee on the podcast, they were like, oh, that's really great, that's really interesting, but they didn't know enough about you. And I think that they didn't understand like how you, to me, kind of hold the light to extend the legacy of your father and your brother. I have to say, I'm a big fan of Brandon Lee. So can you talk a little bit about how you extend the legacy of your father, your brother? What's your mission? And I can only surmise that you have faced a lot of pressures in your life, I would think, is my guess.
Sure.
And at Warrior Women, we're very real. So I'd love for you to talk about how you've extended the legacy, how you've handled pressures, and where the joy comes from.
Well, thank you. Thank you for those questions and for having me on. I got started stewarding my father's legacy, and I suppose my brother's legacy as well, in 2000. At the time, the commercial rights to my father's name and likeness were held by another company. And so it took me 11 years to get those rights back, but I did. And the reason that I did that is because you know, Bruce Lee is primarily known as a martial artist and an action film star. And his films are awesome. They're super entertaining. He's amazing. But what people didn't understand is that the depth, his ability for his energy to travel and influence the world as it did came from his personal practice of growth and introspection and this foundation of philosophy that he really infused everything that he did with. And I felt that everything was like kung fu and dragons, but
Yeah, yeah,
but
yeah,
we
yeah.
were like missing the most essential piece, you know? And that essential piece was the piece that had influenced me. And it's the place where my father and I and I would say my brother as well all sort of come together because we're all seekers, we're all thinkers, we're all creators. And so we sort of rotate around this central access point, if you will. And for me, you know, I had been knocked very, very low by the death of my brother
Yeah,
when I was 24. And um, I was in quite a depression and really struggling in my life for several years after that. But it
mhm,
was my father's writings that actually helped to start to pull me forward and say, okay, you've got to sort of seek your own joy, your own wellness, your own healing, right? And
yeah,
so I started to do that. And as I started to do that, you know, it just so happened that my mom came around and was like, what do you think about, I'm getting older, I want to sort of retire. What do you think about looking after your father's legacy? And she said, you
oh,
don't have to. And I was like, no, 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 I want to. I
okay,
want to because he has gifted me with so much, as he's gifted so many with so much, right? And I want to be able to put out this message of who he was at a deeper level.
yeah,
And so, and look, his legacy and my brother's legacy is also my legacy in a way, right?
absolutely,
Like,
absolutely, yeah,
so, you know, it's my honor to sort of step into that and to step into it in my own way, right?
yeah,
And which is something I've been finding over the years, right? I've now been doing this 24 years. And as I grow and as I learn, you know, everything shifts just a little bit in terms of where my focus and attention goes and what I recognize as my strengths.
yeah.
Has there been a lot of pressure? Sure. But I would say that most pressure is self-imposed pressure. So
Yeah,
yes, there it
I'm
can
laughing because I feel that every day.
right,
Like,
like it
yeah,
can come from the outside, right? It can
yeah,
come from people's expectations and assumptions and all of that. But you have to sort of let that disrupt you in
yeah,
order for that outside pressure to become inside pressure. And then there was my own pressure of, oh, my father and my brother were these amazing individuals. They did so much. How am I ever going to measure up? You know, all of this kind of stuff. And that's all self-imposed. And that's just a matter of doing the work to release that pressure from myself. And also, you know, my father's philosophy is about self-actualization. And he himself said, don't go out and find a successful personality and imitate that person, but
yeah,
really look inside yourself and say, who am I and how can I be me?
mm,
And that is everyone's journey.
yeah.
So, yeah.
I love that. I almost cried. My brother died too, so
Oh, I'm so
I
sorry.
no, I get it. So,
Yeah.
and you're right though. I love that you talked about a few really important things that you took this pain and you took the learnings and you adjusted in a positive way. But what I really liked is that you talked about how you make it your style and your own personality and how. So let's talk about that a little bit. I'm going to go off chart on questions. Talk about how you've created these things that I mentioned up front in your bio, utilizing your own style, like being an, I don't know much about being an executive producer or anything. So talk to about like how you know, yielded your vision in the things that you've created, from the book to the show to the podcast. Like, what is it you think that you bring into it, and how do people perceive that?
Um, it's received all different ways. How it's received is really not my problem in a sense, right? It's more about how do I find the people who receive it and get it and want to collaborate, right? Because there are a lot of people who want to take, but they don't want to give.
Mm,
So, it took me a long time to produce my first project because most people see me as the steward of a legacy and not as a creative person myself.
okay.
And prior to producing anything, you have no experience. So you really need to find somebody who's willing to give you the experience, to let you have a seat at the table. And it took a long time to find that. And I found that in Justin Lin, who was my producing partner for Warrior. And I was very grateful for that because he sort of took me into this industry that, I had acted, but I had never sat on the other side. And so he took me in and treated me as a partner, which I really appreciated. Most people up to that point would come to me and say, we want to make this project. We want to make this
Yeah.
Bruce Lee project. We want rights from you. We want a blessing from you, whatever, but we don't want you involved.
Yeah.
Obviously, they wouldn't say it that black and white,
Like
but
Rocky story.
yeah, but that's what they meant,
Yeah, I
especially
understand. Yeah.
especially once they would send a contract. The contract would say, we get to do all this and, we'll talk to you about it, but that's all. You
Wow.
don't have any approval, you don't have any say, you don't have any input. And I was just like, well,
No.
that's not how it works because I can't steward his legacy effectively if I can't have input on it, right?
Mhm. I
And
mean, of
so,
course, it doesn't make sense to me.
right. And the thing is like, it's fine. There have been many people have come to me, want to do a project, and I'm like, well, this is how I would like to work together. And if they say no, then I'm like, okay, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah. Yeah, I mean, right, you can't force anything.
Yeah, I think that that is an important thing because in my life, when I have forced or when I have compromised myself in a way, which I've done, I think we all do it, right? We're
Oh,
like,
yeah.
well, but this person, they know what they're doing and I don't know what they're doing, so I should
Yeah,
let them do it. And,
yeah,
I mean, at the end of, so those are all great lessons. Those are all great learning
yeah.
lessons. And what I notice for myself is that when something is forced, when I sort of devalue myself in the process or don't stick to my integrity, then those projects, they typically don't work out well. And so it's a huge learning lesson for me to be like, no, the one thing I know, and I guess a lot of people probably in their very general minds think maybe I don't know because my father died when I was 4 years old.
Mm-hmm.
So they're like, well, you didn't really know your father. So how could you really know what is
No.
right from his legacy? And the truth of the matter is that my greatest memory of my father is the sense memory of him. And for years and years, growing up as a kid, I was like, why do I feel like I know this person so well? Like,
Yeah,
I just feel like I know him in this sort of essential, energetic way. And it took
yeah.
me years to figure out that that was a memory. It was a sense memory of him.
It's a
And so
strong.
yeah, super
I know
strong.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And so I'm like, actually, I do know. I know the energetic boundaries,
Mhm.
right? So whenever I do a project, it's like, yeah, okay. Um, you know, maybe I don't know the exact date that this happened or the name of this person or whatever, but I know the energetic boundaries of what this needs to be in order to fit within the legacy. And that's enough. That's enough that to know. You don't need to know anything else, honestly, you know.
Yeah,
Because
no, it's true.
yeah, it's like a barometer where I can go, this feels right, this feels wrong, you know?
So you're talking about a lot that we talk about, not only at Warrior Women in Business, but we were running circles now and things. And like
Mhm.
trusting your intuition, it sounds like whether it's intuition or it's a primal sensory perception of something, which I really like how you visualize that for me. I think that's more of what I think in my experience where women tend to fail because they seem to be locked in boxes sometimes because of the ceiling thing. And I think what you're talking about is knowing when that barometer, when you're right, when something's right for you, when something's wrong for you, not forcing it. So can you share a little bit about the flow state from your experience in projects? Because listen, most of the people that listen to this podcast are entrepreneurs and we're constantly trying different things, right?
Yeah, sure.
So how do we I guess in your projects, where have you seen flow and how have you been able to share anything that you want on tips on how to either access the flow or cut off negative flow, because we get both.
Sure. First of all, I'll say that, you just said as entrepreneurs, we try things. Trying things is really important because that's how you discover flow, right? So whenever I try something, I say, I have a great idea, and then I start to move toward it. If I meet up against resistance, like I can't find the right person, or the people that show up aren't the right people, or I can't get the funding, or whatever the thing is,
Yeah.
rather than just keep pushing forward, I say now, right? Because I've done the pushing forward thing in order to know that that's not the way to go. I I feel the resistance and I go, okay, there's resistance here. So something isn't wanting this to move forward. And it
Mhm.
could be anything. And it could be that there's something in me that isn't totally grounded or understanding of what this project is or means. Maybe it's not the best project for me to spend my time on. Maybe the timing is just off. But
Yes.
the thing is, there's 1,000 other projects. There's 1,000 other ways to go. So whenever I hit resistance nowadays, I go, okay. And I just kind of leave it there. I sort of just like listen to the resistance. I try to go inward and discover what the resistance is. Is it something within myself? Is it just the universe saying, not this or not now, And then I just work on something else. you know,
Yeah,
and it's a
I
sense,
get it.
yeah, it's a sensing game, right? So it's like
Yeah.
whenever I have an idea, and I have my own methods for checking in with myself,
Mhm.
say, does this seem like the right step to make? And if I feel like it is, I make the step and then I see what happens, right?
Okay. Wait, I
Because,
have a question. So
yeah.
so let's say you make a step, like a
Mhm,
big step,
mhm,
right? Entrepreneurs, I make huge steps, right?
mhm.
So, and do you go with any intention that it's going to work out, or do you make this step with just, this is my decision, more logical? I'm going to make this step and we'll see what happens. Because that's interesting what you said,
Yeah.
but that's
I
why.
I think, one of the things my father said is it is always, you should never anticipate the outcome of an engagement. So, and he had all sorts of quotes like this. Goals are not always meant to be reached, but they give you something to aim at. The
Yeah.
thing is with right, like with flow, when you're in flow, you don't actually know where the path is leading. And sometimes The universe says, try this. It's not going to work out for you, but you're going to learn something really valuable. And in fact, it's going to open a doorway that you couldn't see was there before that you can then step through to the thing you really need to do. So I think that, in our human minds, we get too caught up in thinking we can figure everything out. We have no idea, like, about anything, right? Really, right? All we have is the
That's
ability,
true.
yeah, all we have is the ability to be present. Like, you think about martial arts, right? You're a martial artist, I'm a martial artist, so you think about martial arts and it's like you enter into an engagement, you have no idea what the outcome of that engagement is. You've trained, you have some skills,
Yes.
AKA tools,
Mm.
that you're trying for something. And then
Yeah.
but you don't know what the other person has. You don't
That
know,
that's
right?
right.
In this
You don't know
moment.
what the other person has.
That's
So
right. And
yeah.
so it's like you just have to be in full presence, and which is not easy to do. It's the simplest thing in the world. And for us as human beings, it's very hard, right?
Yeah.
So I take a step forward toward something, and and with the intention of wanting to create whatever it is that I have decided I'd like to try to create. And then I take a step toward it. And if if I can move forward, then I move forward. Or if I get blocked, then as I said before, I kind of go like, okay, well,
So you
uh,
pivot.
yeah, I mean, you have to sort of
Pivot.
say, it's my father's quote of using no way as way and having no limitation is limitation. I mean, this is flow. You get blocked, water, will move around, right?
Yes.
So we have to do the same.
Well, it's so true.
Yeah.
I mean, all right, so let's talk about the book a little bit because I mean, I could tell you all the things. I'm a water sign. I got in an accident in water, a pretty
Mm,
bad one. I am
mm.
like when I read the book, I was like, oh my God, like water is such an important subject. I mean, in general, if you think about the elements. But
Sure.
so just what's the central point of the book for those that haven't read it? What can they expect? How do you think it helps and impacts people? Because I think it's great, but I'd love for you to talk about it.
Well, thank you. First of
Welcome.
all, I'd like to say that the book is for anyone. You don't have to be a martial artist and you don't have to be a Bruce Lee fan to get something from the book. The book is my attempt to shine a light on one of my father's central philosophical ideas, which is the idea of being like water. And, that means many things. It means being flexible and adaptable, figuring out how to flow in your life. And, and that means like being, how to be your most essential natural self, how to be formless so that you can flow, right? Like not too rigid.
Mhm.
So, the book sort of taps on all of those things. It's part memoir, it's part biography, and it's part sort of self-help book. But I guess one of the greatest compliments I've had over time is that people who really don't like self-help books tend to actually enjoy this book.
That's a really great compliment.
Yeah, yeah.
As someone who knows
So
books. And a big compliment is if they think of it as a philosophy, if they think of it as like a go-to rather than these are just, steps A to Z. And that's what I found. So
yeah. It's not meant to be, it's meant to, my father's quote around water starts with empty your mind, be
yes.
formless, shapeless like water, right? Empty your mind just means like open your mind, like have some room in your mind to like feel into this and see what you can take from it, as opposed to being like, nope, rigid. I'm not into Bruce Lee. I'm not going to read the book. I'm not, like that kind of thing.
Yeah, well, I love it. And we need more of that today because labeling, in my opinion, is a problem. So the foundation, the camp. Can you share a
Mhm.
little bit about those things and, your mission in these things and how you think on a daily basis, the activity in those is driving that mission?
Sure. So the Bruce Lee Foundation is a 501(c)(3) public charity, founded in 2004, and is it 2004? I think so. There's a hummingbird sitting outside on the
My
wire.
God, how nice.
And it was created essentially to be a place to pass on my father's teachings and practices as a way to instill confidence, as a way to instill wellness, as a way to continue his message out in the world, as a way to continue his the representation that he stands for out in the world. And so, one of the main things is that we work in we have these kids camps called Camp Bruce Lee, which are these day camps that we do with different organizations across the country and in fact across the world, because we do it in Hong Kong as well. And we're growing it all the time. Which is to pass along, first of all, an introduction to the martial arts, because, you said yourself that you gained so much out of the martial arts. And I feel similarly, like just a certain amount of resilience and confidence and grounding within one's own body, I think is in fact a magnificent tool for mental health.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah. And
It'll shut that
so,
anxiety right down if you can do that, in my experience.
yeah, yeah, 100%. And so, I guess technically we work in the sort of like personal empowerment, mental wellness sector, because we combine this experience of martial arts with the philosophies of my father and teaching those through different activities. And so we have these sort of like philosophy in action exercises, and we have some creative exercises that go hand in hand throughout the day with the martial arts, and we focus on different aspects, a different philosophy each day during the camp. And I created this as part of my mission because, I spoke earlier about the fact that I have been healed personally. I have been inspired personally. I have been motivated personally by my father's philosophies. And my mission is to be able to gift that to as many people as possible through all the various things that I do in all various touch points, the foundation being a huge part of that, especially for our youth. Um, and in particular in underserved communities as well, right?
Of
To be
course,
able
yeah.
to give these tools, because I think as a human being, once you work on yourself enough to get to a place where you are starting to flow more and you're feeling better in your life, you start to see that it's possible to feel better in your life. And
Yeah.
then you want that for everybody, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, right. You want to share it.
Yeah.
And I think what I was going to say is interesting. When I say the name Bruce Lee to people, I swear, I feel that people immediately get calm. I had to tell you that. It's an
Yeah.
interesting, it's like this, it's like he's like a noun or something, you know? No, it's very cool. And
Yeah.
it's like,
Yeah.
and the interesting thing is then when I talk about fighting, people think, oh, violence. I'm like, no, I feel like it's the opposite. And I love what you're teaching in the camps and underserved and poor conditioned places. I mean, I see it all over New York, and there's so much violence. I don't know about where you live, but we have a problem with violence here. And I think these teachings and having them permeate through communities is just, it's so important these days, So
Yeah.
really love what you're doing. I think it's really, I didn't realize that it was national, honestly. I didn't really dig that into it. I think there's a lot of organizations. So which organizations do you partner with? Do you work with like police departments or other nonprofits or?
Other nonprofits
Okay.
primarily. We work with the Asian Arts Initiative in Philadelphia,
Oh,
the
okay.
Boys and Girls Club,
Okay.
different sectors of the
Yeah.
Boys and Girls Club in Los Angeles and in Oakland, and
Okay.
the Wingloop Museum in Seattle. We have worked with an organization in Austin, Texas. So and the Hong Kong Heritage Museum, because one of the other aspects of what the foundation does is we create exhibits with museum partners um,
Oh,
on Bruce Lee so that we can continue to present this like fuller picture of who he was as a human being and get people in touch with, the trajectory of his life, all the things that he did and accomplished, as well as his philosophies.
mm. I'm the ambassador for New York Arts and Culture. We'll talk
Oh,
about it offline, or I'll send you information. I'd
great.
love to connect you with some of the museums here. I think it would be a wonderful field trip for kids and something that they
Yeah.
definitely need to learn about. It's really cool. All right,
Yeah.
so I know we're completely running out of time, so I just have two more quick questions for you.
Okay.
One, I mean, especially for you. What does the term warrior woman in business mean to you?
I think that a warrior is a sensitive being,
Mm,
meaning that they have the ability to sense their environment, their inner life, others, right? And then when
yeah,
you bring the term woman to that, right? Women are naturally already more sensing in terms of their ability to sort of feel into situations, people, others. And so we actually have a natural gift for being warriors.
I agree.
And the term warrior to me doesn't mean, that you're um, aggressive necessarily. You can step into your power, but stepping into your power is not stepping into your aggression.
That's right.
So
Mm,
when you're stepping into your power as a woman in business, you are a warrior. And really, business, in my opinion, should not be a different set of, it shouldn't be an entirely different silo from who you are as a human being and how you show up in your life.
love it.
You know, like we should show up as ourselves wherever we are. And for those who don't get it, for those who want to think of women, warriors, business, martial, whatever their preconceived notions of those things are, the warrior doesn't let that bother them. I don't let that bother me. Okay, you're in a different place than me. You don't understand me. That's okay. I'm going to find the people who do understand me. And I'm going to remain in my power. I'm not going to shrink just because, you don't seem to understand me, right? And so I just think that warrior women in business, it's just about doing the work to step into who we are as the creators of this life and of this world. And people who are also good at giving, giving and receiving. As women, I think sometimes we need to do better work at being in receiving. And so like we need to be able to receive and then and give. And it's this like ecosystem of, and we have to do it in a way that keeps us energized. Anything that is draining you, you need to take a hard look at
Mm,
and
okay.
consider, is that really for me? And I think it's an individual journey, all of this. It's like, I think as women, we also have a better ability to hold paradox sometimes.
I
And
understand.
so it's sort of like, yes, it's about working on me so that I can serve the whole, right?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
it's about the whole, but it's about me as a part of that whole.
Yeah. And you learn that as you get older. I mean, that I keep saying, I want to help people, but I have to help myself first because I don't want to give you some broken part of me because it doesn't do
Right.
anything. So I love that you said being yourself. People over and they you said at the beginning of the podcast too about the overthinking situation that we all do because we
Yeah.
do. Life is so fast and furious.
Yeah. I mean, my father said, don't think, feel, right?
Yeah.
And that's it. Feel means sensing. It doesn't mean be in your emotions necessarily. Your emotions are a barometer for for what you're
Mm,
sensing, but
right.
like sense your way through it. Is this for me? Is this not for me? Is there something in myself I need to really look at and work on in order to advance to the next level? That kind of thing.
Yeah. Wow. These are very wise words that we all need to take into account. No, seriously, and I think it's also a matter of thinking that on a daily basis because it's too easy to just read it once and then forget about it. So,
My father talked a lot about this too, but we're all in our habits and our patterns and our ways
yeah.
of being. And the thing about patterns is that they work for a while and then they stop working. And when they stop working, you really need to pay attention. Because it's time to shift what you're doing.
I feel it. So one last question, new projects coming up, things that we haven't mentioned that you want everybody to know about. Can you share?
Sure. So the Bruce Lee podcast is my podcast. You can find it at brucelee.com. You can find it through different podcast apps. I am producing a number of film and television animation things that are in various stages of development. So there's a biopic in the works with Ang Lee as the director that I'm producing. I have a YA fantasy novel based on some of my father's creative writings that was co-written with Fonda Lee. That's coming out next year. I think the announcements and pre-sales will be coming soon. It's part of a YA novel series. I just launched literally, so this is episode 55, and on Friday was my 55th birthday. So,
Ah, birthday.
so
It must be
I'm
your number, 55.
55. It's a good number. So
Right.
I launched my own short form podcast called A Little Leeway.
Okay.
Um, the episodes are like 2 to 5 minutes. They're super short and they're just little nuggets of perspective and inspiration
Right.
for people to
That's nice.
consider. And I have my own website, which is leewaymedia.com, where my own creative stuff is happening. Um, Trying to think what else. I'm working on a number of different things.
What else? You have quite a bit going on. So we're gonna put everything that you mentioned in the show notes.
Okay.
So everybody can get in touch with you, learn more about these organizations, the foundation. I know that
Foundation, yeah.
you have opportunities for people to donate, right, and get involved. Good.
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
good. And listen to the podcast
Yeah.
and watch Warrior.
And watch Warrior. Yeah, you can
Okay,
watch.
hello. Watch
Yeah,
Warrior. It's very
yeah,
cool.
yeah.
It's
Thank
a very
you.
I'll probably ask you to be back on, but I really appreciate your time. This has been enlightening to say the least. Fun, and I really appreciate it. And I'm sure everybody that's tuning in or will tune in later will enjoy all these great nuggets. And also I love the idea of your podcast of nuggets. And I think that's something that we'll keep sharing here because, like I said, it's important that you don't just listen once, but you take this on your daily habits
Mm,
of that keyword and change them if you need
yeah,
to.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna end episode 55. I know Shannon is so busy and she's got to jump on her podcast, the Bruce Lee podcast, which you all
Yeah.
should listen to. So before letting you go, just wanted to mention a couple of quick things. So I'm really excited. I don't know, I think maybe I'm just lucky to have guests like Shannon come on this little podcast. There's another podcast called The Superheroes of Leaders, run
Mm,
by Peter Cuneo, the former chairman and CEO of Marvel Studios, who's going to
mm,
be on the podcast May 14th.
mm,
And a number of other amazing guests coming up on Warrior Women in Business. We'll be announcing events. We have a gala coming up with the Mia Moore Gala. That's May 15th
mm.
here in New York City, which is a gala where we raise money, as I mentioned, Shannon, for victims of domestic violence and human trafficking. We're doing warrior women paintings in the silent auction. So we're doing a lot of things, and then we'll be back in Beverly Hills, I hope, because I do a lot in Beverly Hills, by the end of the year to run another warrior women event. Maybe Shannon could come, which would be amazing, and share her book and her wisdom. That would
Mm.
be really cool. So anyway, wanted to sign off, and again, thank you so much, Shannon, for your time. I appreciate it, and you know, our audience is very appreciative, and we look forward to reading the book, watching the movies, watching the shows. There's a lot of wisdom that she's sharing. So again, thank you so much. Signing off from Warrior Women in Business, episode 55.
Thank you.